I'm happy it's a little cooler. I posted on Facebook this morning that I was that I was here getting centered, and a friend of mine Facebooked back that she said, I misread that and I thought you said you were getting cremated. And I said, it's hot here, and I'm pretty hot too, but there's no cremations happening here this morning. So, in case you were here for the cremation, it's not today. Today what we're going to talk about is the centered breath, which is one of those wonderful processes that we want to do. We want to take some time to do is that centered breath. We want to take time to auscultate. We want to take time to auscultate. Do I have any of my balderdash players from last night in the room? Yes, there's Jennifer back there. So, once in a while we ministers have a little game we play of, can you work this word into your talk? And so last night I was at one of our Nourishing Our Community events, and it was Jillian and Sylvia's game night event, which had fabulous food, and we were playing balderdash afterwards, and I drew the word auscultate. And so people had to, of course, guess what the actual meaning of auscultate was. And actually, Jennifer came the closest. She's a nurse. She actually kind of was pretty darn close to knowing what it meant. And so I had to work that word into the talk. And what the word means is to listen with a stethoscope. And I realized afterwards, that's a pretty cool spiritual idea when you think of it in terms of the centering breath and you think of it in terms of your consciousness. Because what do you do with a stethoscope? You close out everything else, unlike what you want to listen to, and you listen within, to the inside. So I invite you all this week to practice auscultating. But if you don't remember the word, just listen within. Take some time for a centered breath. I was up at 5 this morning doing my first spiritual practice, and I noticed that my body was still kind of going zzz, 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 zzz from the party last night. And it was just nice to just simply take the breath and simply go calm, calm, calm. So I invite us all to take a deep centering breath together. Maybe 3 deep centering breaths together. Let ourselves come to that centered place. But as I said last week, that's not what I came here to talk to you about. Because I contemplated this talk and I said, somebody else maybe could do 25 minutes of a talk on the centered breath, but I can't. You take a centering breath, you come to center. Whatever is happening in your life, take time to move to center. Now, what I want to talk about is what comes next. What do you do after you've taken that centering breath? Because Ernest Holmes said that if we use this teaching just to simply cope with our lives, we are misusing this teaching. If we are taking this teaching to just cope, we are misusing it. We are not stepping into the power that we truly have. I love the reading that we had today. It's actually, the whole of it is in the back of your programs there. It's called What We Believe. And it's in there every single Sunday. But Ernest Holmes originally published it. That was the very first edition of Science of Mind magazine. And people had asked him, what do you believe? And he said, this is what I believe. You can believe what you want, but this is what I believe. And so we have taken it on in our movement to say, this is what we believe. And there's been this one line that's kind of bothered people off and on throughout the entirety of this thing, and that is the next to last line. I believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind. And it bothers people because it's like, well, I shouldn't be controlling conditions. That sounds like me manipulating the world out there for my own selfish purposes. Take a breath, just in case that's you. And there have been people who've learned to strike that line out of that thing. I love it, however, because I think it's a very misunderstood thing. First of all, if we don't control conditions, guess what? Conditions control us. Conditions control us. So who's responsible for our conditions? We are. It's one of the core teachings of this teaching. It's one of the things that separates us from so much else that's out there in the world where it's, God or Jesus or the devil or Allah or somebody else, my karma, my fate, my whatever, the stars, all that other stuff is in charge of my conditions. No, we say, I am in charge of my conditions. I create the life that I choose. And that's what I call the good news, bad news of this teaching. Because sometimes you sit there and go, ooh, if I have to take responsibility for that, and it's not for us to take a hammer and beat ourselves up and go, oh my God, I created that condition. No. If you don't like the condition you create, guess what you can do? Change it. Change it. We are always a choice. We are always in freedom. So it's not a manipulation of the ego and what the ego wants. It's an invitation to stand in our divine power, to recognize that we are truly God in form. And when we look at conditions and we don't see the conditions reflecting the truth, the highest truth of Spirit, and the highest truth of Spirit is life, health, abundance, love, harmony. It is our responsibility to be the place that opens up and allows that quality to come through. It's not a manipulation from the ego of, I'm going to make that happen. It's a stepping back and stepping out of the condition and saying, I am making welcome the truth of Spirit. I am getting my whatever's in the way of that out of the way. I am taking the power. I am taking charge of this condition. I am taking responsibility. What is it in my condition? And so we're starting to reveal that true nature of Spirit. If we look at our relationships and say they're not loving, I don't see love in my relationships in the fullest extent that I would like to see it. If I look at my checkbook or my whatever and don't see the full abundance of Spirit and feeling open and prosperous, if I'm looking at my body and it's not doing, a body to live joyfully in, no matter what age or what, condition, you may have had, people have had accidents where they've lost a limb or they're in wheelchairs or whatever, but if it's not a body that I enjoy being in, okay, I can shift that. I can change that. Doesn't mean I have to grow limbs back. It means I also can control the conditions of how I use my body and how much joy I have in it. I remember in Seattle, I used to know a woman. I was good friends with a woman who was in a wheelchair from a pretty young age, and she danced in her wheelchair. She was beautiful in the movements of this wheelchair. It was just fabulous. So it's not about what's the body look like in terms of perfection. What does the bank account look like in terms of perfection? It's, am I embodying the quality of God that I want in this condition, in this situation? And if not, can I get myself out of the way? So we're here to reveal that consciousness of heaven as earth, here and now. That's also what he says, that I believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. And so our whole dance, our whole process is to become more conscious of the heaven that's within and allow it to be all around us. It's a waking up process. Isn't that great? Yes. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. You don't have to wrestle it down into into whatever. We just become more awake to the truth of what's already there. We're not making something happen that is already there. We're revealing truth that already exists. That is all we're doing. Would you be willing to become a revealer of truth? Yes. Some would. Let's try it again. Would you, the one sitting in your chair, would you be willing to become a revealer of truth in your life? Yes. All right, thank you. Now you ask the question, how? That's always the question, isn't it? Yeah, that sounds great, David. How? We have in this teaching a wonderful process. Some of you are familiar with it, some of you are less familiar with it, some of you may have never heard of it, called spiritual mind treatment. And again, this is one of those kind of slightly archaic terms that people like to these days. Well, we'll call it affirmative prayer. What the heck is a spiritual mind treatment? Such an archaic old term. I love the term. And I love the term for this reason. Number one, it's descriptive of what we're actually doing. Number one, it's treatment. When you go to the doctor, you've got something going on with your body, the doctor does what? He, she gives you a treatment. They treat your broken leg. They give you antibiotics if you've got a virus going on. They do something that's a treatment. They start to treat you to start to make you better. So this is what we're doing with this process. We're doing something. We're doing a process to improve things from what they are. Where are we doing it? In the mind. Whose mind? My mind. I'm doing it in my own mind, to open it up to allow the spiritual nature to reveal itself through. And spiritual mind treatment is always done in my mind, about my mind. See, if I think that Marilyn needs to change, and if I've got this long list of all the things that she needs to fix, okay, and I don't, I can't change her mind. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever tried to change somebody else's mind? I mean, really? It doesn't really work, does it? Yeah, I see husbands and wives pointing at each other there. I've done it too. It doesn't work. We're doing it to shift our consciousness. See, the only thing I have to do is not point my finger at Marilyn. I have to change my consciousness to see the perfection and the grace and the glory and the God of who she is. By the way, when I do that, she might respond differently to me than me going at her all the time. I become more into the happiness of it. So there's this wonderful spiritual mind treatment. I'm working with spirit. I'm working on my mind, and I'm doing something to shift things. The doctors work at the level of condition. They work at the level of out here. They work at the level of the body. A lot of us try and shift things out here, at the level of things. I don't like my job, so I try and change it. I don't like my partner, I try and change him or her. I don't like something else, I try and change that out there. What we're inviting you to do with spiritual mind treatment is change this in here, knowing that whatever you do in here will become your condition out here. You with me? Okay? So, what does this look like? Spiritual mind treatment as a form of prayer is different than what most of us were raised on in the traditional churches we grew up in. It is not beseeching. Dear God, please give me whatever. Please help my football team win, or whatever, It didn't work. The Seahawks lost last time, the other night. The 49ers, even worse. It's preseason, it's okay. They'll all get it together. But it's not beseeching. It's not bargaining. Bargaining is, dear God, I'll be good for the rest of my life if you just... Okay? How many of us have done one of those two forms of prayer somewhere, maybe early in your life? Yeah, okay. It's not that. This is an affirmative prayer that simply says, this is the truth. I'm going to step back and I'm going to know the truth. And so how does this work? Number one, we start with stepping away from the condition. We don't start with the condition. We start with God. We start by looking at God. Because most of us get into the condition. We look at our checkbook. We look at our relationship partner. We look at our body. We look at the condition of the world. We look at the fire that's coming towards our home or our friend's home. And we look at the condition. We want to try and deal with the condition. And the first step of spiritual mind treatment is to step away from the condition and step up in consciousness, God. Spirit, whatever name you want to give it, it's beyond all the names, that infinite presence that's above, beyond, and greater than all the stuff. We start to focus on that. God is. It's like I look at the condition. Let's say I'm looking at my checkbook, and it looks like it's flashing neon sign of not enough, not enough, not enough. Okay? Does God have a problem with not enough? No. Is God ever in lack? The infinite, abundant opulence of the universe, is it ever in lack? Have you noticed? Thank you. No, it doesn't know lack. It doesn't know sickness. It doesn't know disharmony. It's all there is. It's the oneness, and so it's in harmony with itself. If it wasn't, it would have ceased to exist a long time ago. You and I wouldn't be having this discussion because we would have never come around. Take a breath. So we focus on this one infinite presence. It is all that there is. It's like, wait a minute. I'm looking at this checkbook and say, wait a minute. Let me step back for a minute. I got to put that aside. I'm not going to look at that. I'm going to step back for a minute. I'm going to remember, wait a minute. God is all there is. There's only one life. That life is God's life. It's the only game in town. It's the only thing that's really happening. I may have forgotten that and created something that looks different than that, but it's the only thing that's happening. God is. And so we start to declare to ourselves until we absolutely remember it. What is God? What is the nature of God? So, and I always encourage people to do it about what you're working on. So if I'm working on a checkbook that doesn't look right for me, I'm not going to sit there and go, God is the beauty of nature, because I don't care about that. It is. But I want to know that God is the opulent abundance. It's that which creates billions of stars in this galaxy, and then billions of galaxies of stars. And now scientists tell us probably multiple what we call universes of galaxies of stars. Does that sound like lack and limitation to you?
No.
Yeah. Okay? If you want to just look at the planet, the grains of sand, the amount of trees, the leaves in my backyard at the moment, the amount of weeds that grow. You know, the nature of God is abundance in everything that it does. Overwhelming, opulent abundance. And so we remember, wait, that's the truth of God. That's the truth of God. And then we move to a second step, because if God is all there is, if there's nothing but that infinite presence, I'm using the word God. If you need to translate that word, go. I'm not talking about the big guy in the sky with a long white beard looking down at you going, you're a bad girl, you're a bad boy, you're going to hell. I'm not talking about that one, okay? Just so we're clear, if you're new here. I'm talking about the infinite presence of love that is everywhere and present in the universe. And so that infinite presence, because it's everywhere present, guess what you are? An aspect of it. You are one of it. You can't be outside of it. Nothing about you is outside of God. Not your dirtiest, darkest, most feared, most thing you won't want to talk about, secret. Even that is within the infinite love of God. Isn't that good?
Yes.
That is the good news. You may not like it. The infinite presence loves you anyways. This is what Jesus talked about with that story of the prodigal son. You know, the kid who asked for his inheritance early on, which, by the way, in Jewish law, he could have been stoned to death for just asking. Okay? I don't know if you realize that or not. But in Jewish law, he could have been stoned to death just for the asking. First of all, he was the number 2 son. Who gets the inheritance? And 1 son. Dad says what? Yes, you can have your inheritance. Now, let me ask you this. If your teenage kid walked up to you, your 17-year-old, and said, hey, you're going to kick the bucket someday anyways. I want my inheritance now. Would you just smile at them and say yes? Probably not. But in this picture of what's the relationship of God, God the Father says yes. The kid goes out, has a good time, blows it, ends up slopping pigs, which is about as low as a good Jewish boy could go at that time. Today we'd say he probably had a crack habit and was living on the street. Okay? Finally wakes up and says, it says he came to himself. He remembered who he was. Who am I? I'm my father's son. In my father's ranch, the ranch hands live better than I'm living right now. And he started to return to the father. What does the father do? The father stands in the front porch waiting for that kid to come, and this toe tapping and his fingers kind of like this, and says, I told you so. I knew you'd be back. I figured you'd blow it. Is that how the story, that was how the story went, right? Did I miss that up? No, that's not how the story went. No, the father rushes down the road, grabs new clothes, grabs a ring, sets up a barbecue, kill a fatted calf, throw a party, and greets the kid. He doesn't sit there and go, you got to earn your way back. You got to pay off your karmic debt. You got to do this, do that, jump through this hoop, prove yourself good enough. No, he just says, welcome back, you're my son. You've always been my son. You always will be my son. I love you. Guess what the universe is saying to you? I love you. You're my beloved son, daughter. I don't care what you've done. I love you. Because I am you, and you are me. You and I are one. The infinite and you are one. Take a breath. I like to say that if you get those first 2 steps of treatment, you're done. Because if you really get that there's one infinite presence that is pure love, pure abundance, pure health, pure vitality, pure life energy, pure joy, radiating constantly, and you're one of it, what do you think your checkbook's going to look like pretty dang quickly? What do you think your relationship, your body, your job, your career, this planet is going to look like if we all really got that? One. It's going to look great. It's going to reflect that nature of the divine. Jesus said, it's not I, but the Father within that does the work. And so that's all we're doing, is we're unleashing the Father, Mother, infinite presence within to do the work. And then the step 3 of this 5-step process called spiritual mind treatment is then we start to speak the truth about the condition. And so we look at if in this example we're looking at our checkbook, we look, wait. Since there is one infinite presence and it is abundant, and since I'm one of it, there's no way that I can live in lack or limitation. There is no opportunity for lack and limitation in my life. And so therefore I open myself up as a conduit for the expression of that true nature of abundance and opulence in my life. There's a process in treatment where if you're stuck, if your mind is still chattering back at you going, but, yeah, but. Anybody besides me ever, yeah, okay. There's a process called argumentative treatment where it's almost like you're a lawyer building a case against whatever it's saying. Emma Curtis Hopkins talks about the use of something called denials. There is no lack or limitation in the universe. And so it's like pulling out the weeds in your thought, and then the important thing to do is plant the new plant you want in your thought. So you don't just pull the weeds, you also put in what you want. So there is no lack or limitation in the universe. And therefore, there is no lack or limitation in my life or in my consciousness now. And so I plant and I know in my consciousness, and I stand in the knowing until it manifests that I am a place of abundance. I am a center of the abundance and the opulence of the universe, or I am a center of the health and the vibrational aliveness of the universe, or I am a center of the love and the harmony of the universe, whatever qualities it is that you want, that I am that in form, and I stand and do it until I know this. And the core of this is you do it until you feel it. This is not just some nice, pretty words you say. This is not the Our Father or the Hail Mary that I grew up Catholic that we say just by rote without any feeling whatsoever. You say this with feeling. You say this until you get it each step of the way. God is all there is. I don't move on until I'm sure that God is all there is. There are times it takes me 1 second, and there are times that I had a minister friend whose daughter ended up in a serious automobile accident, and she was in the hospital, and the mom was with her in the hospital, and she said, it took me an hour just to get through step 1. And by the way, that's the point where you lean into your help. You lean into other people who know your faith. That's why we have practitioners. That's why we have assistant ministers. That's why we have the prayer request cards that are in the back there to put prayer requests in. You lean, when you can't know it, you lean into another's faith. That's why these practitioners are trained to know the truth in all circumstances. But we start doing that. We start declaring what the truth is, and we don't stop until we're done, until we know it. Until we feel it, until it is in our bones and in our cells that this is, in fact, my truth. So you practically want to pop it out of your skin. You know, Jesus said something about, if other people don't declare it, the rocks will call my Father's name, will say my Father's name. Until you know it's going to happen. Until you absolutely know this is a done deal. And then you give thanks. This is step 4. You move into a thanksgiving, a space of gratitude, because by this time you're grateful. You know it's on its way. You know it's happening. You know it's in process. And so you just give thanks as though it's a done deal. We're not giving thanks to somebody up there granting our wish, by the way. We're just moving into the feeling of gratitude. If I handed you a winning lottery ticket today, would you feel gratitude? A large winning lottery ticket, not a $2 one, a big one. Would you feel some gratitude? Yes. A couple of you would, okay. The rest of you, you're great, okay. You'd feel gratitude. If somebody gives you a gift, you just naturally feel grateful. And so that's really what it is you're just feeling grateful for this, which is already in the process of manifesting, and you know it is. Then finally, you do the hardest step of prayer, of all prayer. Step 5, this is the toughest one, isn't it? You release it. You let it go. You turn it over to the universe, because where we get stuck in step 3 is we don't know the how. We try and figure out the how. When we're in step 3, all we're declaring is what we want. I've met people who come in and declare, I want to win the lottery. No, you don't. You want to have an abundance of income or an abundance of wealth. Winning the lottery is one way of doing it, but it's a how. Somebody could leave you a large fortune. You could find a large fortune laying around on the ground. There's all sorts of possibilities of how that can happen. We don't get into the how. We turn the how over to the universe, and that's what we do in step 5. So I release this process into what we call the law, the way that it's operating, the way that the infinite operates, and let it manifest it in its way, in the most beautiful ways possible. And we release it, we take our hands off it. It's like planting the seed in the ground, and you don't keep digging it up to look at it over and over again to see if it's growing. You let go. You put the seed in the ground, you trust the process of nature to grow that seed, right? Yes, some of you do. Some of you either are not gardeners or you dig things up. Prayer changes consciousness. Everything is created out of consciousness. Everything. Years ago, I had a friend of mine who came to me because he had lost his Palm Pilot, which tells you how long ago it was. These days, people go, what's a Palm Pilot? Before there were smartphones, there were dumb phones. Before there were dumb phones, there were Palm Pilots, which were your little calendar, little electronic calendars. He lost his Palm Pilot. He'd been searching for it for a couple of weeks. He knew that I was really good about stuff that's lost. I am. Because I know that there's nothing lost in the universe, because there's only one mind and it knows where it all is and reveals it. And so he came to me and asked me to pray for that, and so I did the prayer for him to find that prayer that he would find his Palm Pilot. He came back to me a couple days later and he says, I forgot to tell you that my wife had also lost hers. He said, I found mine sitting on the dashboard of my pickup truck. He said, I had looked there at least 5 times and I never saw it there. And all of a sudden it was there. Not only that, but my wife found hers also in a place that she had looked several times, could swear it wasn't there, and she found it there. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about deflecting? You know, somebody says something really good about you and you just go, oh, no, not me. I did that with that process, okay? I just said, oh, God's great. God's good, yeah. A couple of weeks after that, I was at a retreat with a guy named Terry McBride. I don't know if any of you ever met Terry McBride, but he's what I call a construction worker's science of mind teacher. He uses words that are not always church appropriate and kind of a little rough around the edges, but he's adamant about it. He's very good at it. And he was doing our retreat, and he was inviting us to make sure we stood in our power and we claimed our power. We accepted how magnificent we truly are. And my friend told that story. And he looked at me and says, man, you are that powerful. And I said, well, I kind of, He says, no, you are that powerful. That Palm Pilot wasn't there until you declared it to be there. And it's kind of like, oh, do I really want to accept that? And the answer is yes. That's the good news and bad news. Because guess what? We're doing that anyway. Guess who declared the Palm Pilot not there? My friend, who later on realized he didn't want to take a look at a couple of appointments that were in the pilot for that coming up period of time. I've had a number of experiences where I've done things in what we would call energy work or prayer work or whatever like that have had extremely tangible results. I've seen people heal bones, remove tumors, all sorts of stuff with the power of prayer. It is far more powerful than any of us give it credit for. And I'm going to invite you this week to take that 5-step process. God is. I am. God is this. I am one of that. Therefore, the truth of this situation is, and I get specific on what it is that I'm going to declare into existence. I don't have to battle with my checkbook. I declare the truth of my abundant nature. I don't have to worry about what my wife or husband or partner thinks about this, or my children, or my parents, or whoever I'm in a relationship with, my boss, my coworker. I declare the truth of, I now accept and claim a harmonious relationship with so-and-so. I don't have to figure out how. Okay? I declare what it is that I want. I speak my word, I declare it. I'm grateful. Step 4, I'm grateful to know that it's already in process, it is already happening. And finally, I release it. I let it go. I let that which is the universal process for manifesting stuff. Universal process for manifesting stuff. That's a good, we've got to remember that one. That UP, whatever it is, UPMS, take it over and do its thing, and I get the heck out of the way. Are you willing to do that this week? Yes. Great. I have a reading somewhere in here. This is from Ernest Holmes. Effective treatment is propelled by a consciousness of love and a realization that the creative spirit is always at work. It's the other thing I want to say when you're doing a treatment. Do it in love. Love your good into your life. Sometimes I've seen people do it out of panic. I've seen people do it out of anger. I've seen people do it out of fear. Do it out of love. It's out of love and a realization that the creative spirit is always at work. The practitioner, and each of us when we're doing this process, we are practicing. We are a practitioner. The practitioner does not feel that he or she must compel the force to work. It is the nature of the creative power to take form, and it is the nature of us to use it. Got it? Got it? Yeah. Thank you. Just checking that you're awake. A treatment should be given in a calm, expectant manner and with a deep inner conviction of its reality, without any fear or any sense that the human mind must make it effective. The work is effective because the law is always in operation. Again, you're not making it happen. You're opening up to the law, which wants to always lift us up, in operation to work in your life. Spiritual mind treatment should bring into actual manifestation the health and happiness which are mankind's normal and divine heritage. Will you accept your heritage this week? Yes. Great. So let us take that into prayer ourselves right here, right now. So I begin by knowing that there is one infinite presence, pure love, pure consciousness, pure infinite knowingness, the power of all the universe. That is all that there is. Its nature is opulent and abundant. It is the life energy and the flow of all of life. It is life itself. That is the infinite presence. That is the nature of that one. And because it is infinite, I know that each of us is, must, and can only be one of that. That none of us, nobody in this room, nobody watching this video, no one anywhere is separate from that one. We may not know it, we may forget it, but the truth is we are never separate from the one. We are always creating out of our power. And so we are the love. We are that power. We are that infinite intelligence. We are that opulence and that abundance. We are that life force. We are it right here, right now. Breathe. And so from that awareness, I speak my word, knowing that I am also one of that right here, right now, that each and every person in this room and each and every person who watches this video gets it, steps into their power more beautifully, more fully than ever before. That each of us manifests a life and a planet that is in greater harmony with spiritual truth than ever before. Not just in little incremental ways, but in huge ways. That there is big love happening. There is big harmony happening. There is massive life, energy, and abundance happening for all of us. Do we say yes to how big and how good the universe is? Do we remember, as that reading from a couple of weeks ago, our capacity is God? And so we move into our capacity. We move into an expanded idea of how massive and how beautiful and how great we can be and how great we are. We allow this to be our truth. We allow this to be our manifest truth. And so there are healings that happen in the body. There are healings that happen in a relationship. There are healings that happen in finances. There are healings that happen all over people's lives because of a result of doing this process and saying yes to Spirit in ways that they have never said yes before. This is what is happening for each and every person here right now. And I'm grateful to know that this is the truth, and I'm grateful for the awesome good that manifests from this process. I'm grateful for the release of all that has held people back in the past and is put where it belongs in the past. And so I'm grateful for the fabulous results, the manifest love that is showing up in each person's life right here, right now. And so I release the process of how this shows up into that infinite presence which knows exactly how to bring it into form and experience in each person's life and does so right here, right now. And together we say and declare, and so it is. All right.